The council chamber was huge. It stretched high above the floor with walls that seemed to touch the clouds. Strange lights floated in the air, casting colors that human eyes had never seen before. Ambassador Chen stood on a small platform, looking very tiny among the giant aliens around her. Representatives from 40 different species filled the chamber. Some had scales that glittered like diamonds. Others were made of living crystal that hummed with soft music. There were beings of pure energy, floating clouds of thought and creatures so strange that Chen's mind struggled to understand their shape. Admiral Kravik slammed his 4 clawed hands on the table. He was from the Vrek species, looking like a giant mantis made of black armor. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. We must show strength. The Devourers understand only power. I commit 10,000 warships to this fight. The other species cheered. High Luminary Eseth rose next, her crystalline body ringing like bells. Light danced through her form, creating rainbows on the walls. The Lumini will contribute 5,000 dreadnoughts. Each one carries enough firepower to crack a planet. More species stood, each declaring their military strength. The Kelrath offered 3,000 battle cruisers. The Morphids promised 2,000 bioships. The numbers grew and grew. Soon the combined fleet would number over 50,000 vessels. Ambassador Chen waited quietly. She was small and plain compared to these magnificent beings. Her simple gray suit looked dull next to their glowing forms and impressive armor. She had been representing Earth for 5 years now, ever since first contact. 5 years of being dismissed, ignored, and treated like a child among adults. Admiral Kravik finally noticed her. His compound eyes turned toward her platform, showing what might have been amusement. And what of Earth? What does the youngest species bring to our grand armada? Other representatives turned to look. Some whispered to each other. A few laughed quietly. Humanity was new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Their technology was primitive. Their military was small. They controlled only one solar system. Chen stood straight. She met Kravik's many eyes without fear. Earth is sending a ship, she said simply. Silence fell across the chamber. Then someone laughed. Then another. Soon the entire council was laughing. The sound echoed off the walls, mixing with clicks, chirps, musical notes, and sounds that had no human equivalent. One ship? Kravik's voice dripped with scorn. We face the Devourers! They have consumed 3 entire sectors. They left nothing behind but empty worlds stripped of all life. And humanity sends one ship? High Luminary Eseth's light pulsed in a pattern that Chen had learned meant disappointment. Ambassador Chen, we understand that Earth's resources are limited. But surely you can contribute more than 1 vessel. Even a dozen patrol boats would be more useful. Chen shook her head. Her face showed no emotion. 1 ship, she repeated. The UNSC Indomitable. She will meet you at the threshold system in 30 days. A small alien that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up, its voice like wind chimes. Perhaps humanity does not understand the threat. The Devourers are not like other enemies. They do not conquer. They consume. Every ship, every station, every living thing in their path becomes food for their fleet. 3 sectors, Ambassador. Billions of lives, we understand, Chen said quietly. Better than you might think. She closed her briefcase and turned to leave the platform. The other ambassadors whispered among themselves. Some made gestures that might have been pity. Others seemed angry that Earth was wasting their time. As Chen walked toward the exit, Kravik called after her. When your single ship arrives, we will position it at the rear of the formation. Perhaps it can at least record our victory for your people. Chen paused at the door. She looked back over her shoulder. The Indomitable doesn't do rear positions, she said. Then she left. That night, in her quarters aboard the human embassy station, Chen sent a single encrypted message to Earth. It contained only 2 words. They're ready. Far away, in the Sol system, a ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit. It was not the biggest ship humanity had ever built. It was not the most beautiful, but every person who worked on it knew what it represented. The UNSC Indomitable had a crew of 200 souls. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, and dreamers. They knew where they were going. They knew the odds, and they went anyway, because that's what humans do. The threshold system had become the most crowded place in the galaxy. Thousands upon thousands of ships filled the space around the dead star at its center. Warships of every design imaginable floated in massive formations, their running lights creating a field of artificial stars. Admiral Kravik stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Wrathbringer. Through the massive windows, he could see his fleet. 10,000 Virex warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. Their black hulls absorbed light, making them look like holes cut in space itself. Weapons bristled from every surface. This is what power looks like, he thought with satisfaction. High Luminary Eseth's fleet arrived next. Her crystal dreadnoughts caught the light of distant stars and scattered it in brilliant patterns. Each ship sang a different note, and together they created a symphony that could be heard across radio frequencies. 5,000 vessels of living glass, each one capable of channeling enough energy to vaporize a moon. More fleets continued to arrive. The Kelrath brought their angular warships, all sharp edges and aggressive geometry. The Morphids arrived with their bioships, living creatures the size of skyscrapers that moved through space like whales through an ocean. The Zenthi contributed their drone swarms, millions of small fighters controlled by a single hive mind. 15,000 ships, 20,000, 30,000. The number grew until space itself seemed crowded. Admirals coordinated positions, arguing over who would have the honor of the front lines. Communications channels buzzed with activity in hundreds of languages. On the 28th day, Captain Sarah Okonkwo brought the Indomitable through its final jump. The human ship appeared at the edge of the system, its engines leaving a trail of blue light behind it. Sarah stood on her bridge, looking at the view screen with calm eyes. She was 42 years old, with gray starting to show in her dark hair. She had spent 20 years in Earth's Navy, working her way up from engineer to captain. She had seen war before. She knew what it cost. Lieutenant Chen, no relation to the ambassador, sat at the communications station. He was young, just 25, with nervous hands and quick eyes. "Captain, I'm receiving hails from the Allied fleet. Admiral Kravik is requesting we take position at coordinates Delta 77. That's behind everyone else, ma'am." Sarah smiled slightly. "Of course it is. Open a channel to all Allied commanders." The view screen split into dozens of windows. Alien faces of every description looked back at her. Some curious, some amused, some openly dismissive. Admiral Kravik's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Ah, the human ship arrives. We had almost forgotten about you. Your assigned position is marked. Try to stay out of the way when the fighting starts." Sarah kept her face neutral. "Respectfully, Admiral, we would like to coordinate our tactical approach. The Indomitable has capabilities that might complement your formations." High Luminary Eseth's melodic voice chimed in. "What capabilities could one ship possibly offer? We appreciate your courage in coming, Captain, but this is a battle for experienced fleets." The other commanders nodded or made equivalent gestures. A Kelrath admiral spoke, her voice harsh like grinding stones. "The humans mean well, but they are children in these matters. They have known space travel for only 50 years. We have fought wars for millennia. Take your position, little ship. Let us handle this." Sarah closed the channel without responding. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. They had expected this. They had prepared for it. Commander Rodriguez, her first officer, moved to stand beside her chair. He was a big man with a scarred face and gentle eyes. "They don't know what we are, do they?" he said quietly. "No," Sarah replied. "They see a medium-sized vessel with outdated weapons. They see 200 crew members against their millions. They see primitives playing at war. What do we see, Captain?" Sarah turned to look at her crew. Engineers who had rebuilt this ship from the inside out. Scientists who had developed technologies the galaxy had never imagined. Soldiers who had trained for years for this moment. 200 people who had volunteered for what everyone said was a suicide mission. "We see what needs to be done," she said, "and we do it. That's enough." Deep in the ship's core, the experimental systems waited. The probability engine, capable of running millions of combat simulations per second. Cassandra, the adaptive AI that had been learning and growing for 5 years. Weapon systems that didn't just shoot but adapted and evolved. The Lazarus Protocol, humanity's answer to a question no one had asked yet. The Indomitable moved to its assigned position at the back of the fleet. On every other ship, crew members barely noticed. One small human vessel among 50,000 giants, irrelevant. On the 30th day, the sensors began to scream. Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked with tension. "Captain, multiple contacts jumping in at the edge of the system. Reading. Oh God, ma'am, there are thousands of them. Tens of thousands." Sarah gripped her armrests. "Show me." The view screen changed. Where empty space had been moments before, there was now a wall of ships. But these were like nothing the galaxy had ever built. They looked organic and mechanical at once, as if metal and flesh had merged into something new and terrible. Each one pulsed with a sickly green light. Each one was covered in what looked like teeth. The Devourers had arrived. They were not slowing down. The first Devourer ship hit the Allied line like a hammer striking glass. It simply phased through the shields of a Vrex cruiser and latched onto its hull. Within seconds, the cruiser's metal began to dissolve. Crew members screamed over the communications as their ship was eaten alive around them. Admiral Kravik roared orders from his flagship. All ships open fire. Maximum power. 50,000 ships fired at once. The space around the threshold system lit up like a new sun. Energy beams, missiles, plasma bolts, and weapons that had no human names filled the void. The light was so bright that sensors had to dim their displays to protect crew eyes. The Devourer ships absorbed it all. Their hulls rippled and changed. Where energy beams hit, the metal adapted and became reflective. Where missiles struck, the flesh metal grew thick armor. They were learning. They were evolving. And they kept coming. Within 5 minutes, the front line collapsed. Vrex ships that had fought for 10,000 years died without landing a single effective hit. The Devourers swarmed over them like ants over sugar, consuming everything. Metal, fuel, crew, it all disappeared into those hungry mouths. High Luminary Eseth tried a different approach. Her crystal ships fired focused beams of pure energy, hot enough to crack planets. The Devourers simply opened holes in their hulls and let the beams pass through harmlessly. They're not fighting us. Eseth's voice chimed over the communications, now filled with fear instead of music. They're harvesting us. Panic spread through the Allied fleet. Ships broke formation trying to retreat. But the Devourers moved faster than they should be able to. They appeared behind fleeing vessels, cutting off escape routes. They coordinated perfectly, moving as one vast organism instead of individual ships. On the Indomitable, Sarah watched the massacre unfold. Around her, the crew worked in grim silence. They had known this would happen. They had seen the intelligence reports. The Devourers didn't fight wars. They fed. Rodriguez stood at her shoulder, his face pale. 15,000 ships gone in the first hour. 20,000 in the second. Sarah, we have to do something, not yet, she said quietly. We need to see their pattern. Cassandra, are you recording all of this? The ship's AI responded, her voice calm and oddly warm for a machine. Yes, Captain. I have analyzed 3,742 different attack patterns. The Devourers share information instantly across their entire fleet. When one learns something, they all learn it. That's their strength, Sarah said. But it's also their weakness. Rodriguez, prepare the Lazarus Protocol. All crew, this is the captain. Remember your training. Remember why we built this ship. Today we show the galaxy what one ship can do when it refuses to die. A Kelrath battle group tried to make a stand. 200 ships formed a sphere, firing inward at the Devourers that swarmed them. For a moment, it seemed to work. Then the Devourers simply flew into the sphere from all sides at once, and the formation dissolved into chaos. Emergency channels flooded with calls for help. Ships dying, stations burning, entire species watching their fleets destroyed. The communications officer on the Indomitable had tears running down his face as he listened to the screams. Lieutenant Chen looked back at Sarah. Captain, Admiral Kravik is calling for a full retreat. All surviving ships are to jump out immediately. Sarah stood up from her chair. Broadcast on all channels. I want every ship to hear this. The channel opened. On 50 different bridges in 50 different species languages, captains heard her words. This is Captain Okonkwo of the UNSC Indomitable. To all Allied vessels, retreat to jump distance now. We will buy you time. Admiral Kravik's voice came back, confused and desperate. Buy us time? You're one ship. What can you possibly do? Sarah smiled, but there was no humor in it. Watch and learn, Admiral. Indomitable out. She turned to her crew. The bridge was small, cramped even. Nothing like the vast command centers of the alien flagships, but every person here knew their job. Every person here had chosen to be here. Engineering, Rodriguez said into his console, spin up the probability engine. Weapons arm everything we have. Cassandra, you're about to get a lot of new data. Try to enjoy it. The AI laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Captain. I thought you would never ask. The Indomitable's engines flared to full power. The small human ship, The one that everyone had dismissed and ignored suddenly accelerated toward the center of the Devourer swarm. Behind them, the remaining Allied ships watched in disbelief. 3,000 vessels, all that remained of the mighty armada, began their retreat. They jumped away to safety, leaving the Indomitable alone in the dark. One ship. 200 souls. Against 50,000 Devourers who had never known defeat. Sarah sat back in her chair and cracked her knuckles. All right then, let's teach these things why you don't mess with humans. The Indomitable dove into hell. The Indomitable did not fight like the other ships. It moved like water, like smoke, like something that refused to be caught. While the alien fleets had attacked in straight lines and rigid formations, the human ship danced through space with impossible grace. Cassandra, the ship's AI, had taken partial control of the flight systems. She processed information faster than any organic brain could dream. The probability engine ran millions of simulations every second, showing her every possible future, every possible move. A Devourer ship lunged at the Indomitable. Cassandra saw it coming 3 seconds before it moved. The human ship twisted sideways, using momentum in ways that should not have been possible. The Devourer passed through empty space. The Indomitable fired. But these were not normal weapons. Humans had studied the alien wars for 50 years. They had learned something important. The galaxy fought with overwhelming force. They built bigger guns, thicker armor, more ships. Humanity went a different direction. They built weapons that adapted, missiles that learned from every miss, energy beams that changed frequency mid-flight, projectiles that split and recombined based on target behavior. The Devourer that had missed the Indomitable suddenly found itself hit by a spread of smart missiles. They struck in sequence, each one learning from the previous impact. The first 3 were absorbed. The 4th broke through. By the 7th, the Devourer's hull was breached, but 1 kill meant nothing. There were 50,000 Devourers. They swarmed toward the Indomitable from all sides. Sarah watched the tactical display. Red markers everywhere, closing in. Good. That's what we want. All crew, brace for heavy maneuvering. Cassandra, you have control. Thank you, Captain, the AI replied. This will be interesting. The ship began to move in ways that would have killed any crew not trained for this. It spun, dove, climbed through 3 dimensions of space. The inertial dampener screamed, working at 110% capacity. Crew members felt their bones flex under the strain, but they had trained for this. Every person on board had spent months in the simulator, experiencing forces that should not be survivable. They had pushed their bodies to the limit and then beyond. They knew pain. They embraced it. The Indomitable led the Devourers on a chase through a field of debris from the destroyed Allied fleet. Cassandra used everything as a weapon. She fired missiles into wreckage, creating shrapnel clouds. She positioned the ship so Devourers fired at her but hit each other. She exploited every tiny advantage. Rodriguez gripped his console, his knuckles white. Captain, we're down to 70% hull integrity. Shield generators are overheating. We can't keep this up forever. We don't need forever, Sarah said. We just need long enough. Cassandra, have you found it? Working on it, Captain. The Devourers share information through quantum entanglement. It's beautiful, really. Every ship connected to every other ship. They think as one, but yes, I see it now. There's a central node, a flagship. If we can reach it, can we reach it? Sarah asked. Probability is low, 7% chance of survival. But yes, we can reach it. Sarah looked around her bridge. Every face showed strain. Several crew members were bleeding from their noses, a sign of dangerous G-forces. The ship groaned around them, metal stressed beyond safe limits. But no one suggested retreat. No one asked to turn back. She pressed the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We found their weak point. We're going after it. Some of us won't make it. Maybe none of us will. But if we succeed, we save everyone. We save the whole galaxy. I'm proud to serve with you all. Rodriguez, activate the Lazarus Protocol. Lazarus Protocol activated, Rodriguez confirmed. Captain, even if we survive the approach, this will destroy the ship. That's why it's called Lazarus, Sarah said. We die so we can come back. Engineering, overload the probability engine. Weapons arm the quantum cascade. Cassandra, plot us a course straight to their flagship. Maximum speed. The Indomitable stopped dodging. It stopped weaving. It simply pointed at the heart of the Devourer swarm and accelerated. The engines burned so hot that the rear hull began to glow. The ship's frame groaned. Warning alarms screamed on every console. Devourers threw themselves at the ship. The Indomitable took hit after hit. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7. Life support failing in Section 4. The medical bay reported casualties. Still the ship pushed forward. Sarah felt something warm on her face. Blood. Her nose was bleeding from the strain. Around her, half the bridge crew had passed out at their stations. But the others kept working, kept fighting, kept pushing forward with bloodied determination. "There," Cassandra said. "The flagship. I'm uploading the corruption code now." The probability engine began to overload, generating heat that threatened to melt the core. But in its final moments, it created something beautiful. It found every possible future, every possible timeline, and chose the one where the Devourers destroyed themselves. The quantum cascade released. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was information. It was a virus, a corruption, a single perfect lie inserted into the Devourer's hive mind. It told them that they were hungry. It told them that food was right there. It told them that the nearest food source was each other. The Devourer fleet turned on itself. 50,000 ships began to consume each other in a feeding frenzy of madness. The space around the threshold system became a churning mass of destruction as the swarm tore itself apart. And at the center of it all, the Indomitable exploded in a flash of light so bright that it could be seen from the next system over. The human ship was gone, but its crew's sacrifice had saved the galaxy. 3 weeks passed. The Galactic Council met again in the same grand chamber. But this time there was no boasting, no proud declarations of military might. The representatives sat in silence, mourning their losses. Admiral Kravik stood to give his report. His armor was scorched. One of his arms was missing, replaced with a crude mechanical limb. Of the 10,000 ships he had brought to the threshold system, only 400 survived. "We failed," he said simply. "The Devourers were too strong, too adaptable. We would have lost everything if not for—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "If not for the human ship," High Luminary Esseth rose next. Her crystalline form was cracked in several places. The light within her dim. Her musical voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "We witnessed something impossible. One ship against an enemy that destroyed 50,000 vessels. The Indomitable did not run. It did not hide. It attacked. And somehow it won. The Devourer fleet destroyed itself. We do not understand how Ambassador Chen stood from her platform. She looked the same as always. Small, plain, unremarkable. But now every eye in the chamber watched her with something new. Respect. My government thanks the Council for their condolences," she said. "We mourn the loss of the Indomitable and her crew, 200 brave souls who gave their lives to save the galaxy." A Kelrath admiral spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. "Ambassador Chen, we must know. How did your ship accomplish this? What weapon did you use? We saw no explosion large enough to destroy the entire Devourer fleet." Chen smiled slightly. "It was not a weapon, Admiral. It was a virus. A corrupted piece of information inserted into the Devourer's shared consciousness. The Indomitable did not destroy the swarm. It made the swarm destroy itself." The chamber erupted in discussion. Such technology was unheard of. To weaponize information itself, to turn an enemy's strength into their weakness, the implications were staggering. Admiral Kravik's voice cut through the noise. "There is more, Ambassador. We detected no debris from the Indomitable, no wreckage. Your ship simply vanished. What happened to it?" Chen's smile grew wider. "The Indomitable followed the Lazarus Protocol. We did not send our people to die, Admiral. We sent them to win and come home." Silence fell. Then High Luminary Esseth spoke, her voice filled with hope. "You mean—" "I mean they're alive," Chen said. "Somewhere out there, drifting in space, and we're going to find them." Far from the council chambers, far from any star, the wreckage of the Indomitable drifted through the endless dark. The ship was barely recognizable. Entire sections were missing. The hull was torn open in a dozen places. Life support ran on emergency power. Captain Sarah Okonkwo sat in what remained of her bridge. 23 crew members had survived. 23 out of 200. They huddled together in the few sections that still had air and heat. Food was running low. Water even lower. But they were not afraid. Not really. Rodriguez sat beside her, working on a piece of broken equipment with steady hands. "You know, Captain, I think we might actually pull this off." Sarah looked at him. "Pull what off?" "Surviving. Getting home. Being the crew that refused to die." Rodriguez grinned. It's very human of us. Around them, other crew members worked on repairs. They sang old Earth songs. They told jokes. They shared their last rations with smiles on their faces. They were broken, exhausted, and stranded in the void, but they were alive. And that meant they had already won. Cassandra's voice came through the damaged speakers, crackling with static but still warm. "Captain, I've managed to restore partial sensor function. Also, I've been leaving quantum breadcrumbs along our path. If anyone comes looking, they'll find us." "Good work, Cassandra," Sarah said. "How are you holding up?" The AI laughed. "My core processors are damaged. My memory banks are fragmented. I'm running on 17% efficiency. Captain, I've never felt more alive." Days turned into weeks. The survivors adapted, as humans always do. They built new systems from broken parts. They grew plants in the hydroponics bay to stretch their food supply. They exercised in the corridors to keep their bodies strong. They refused to give up. On the 47th day, Lieutenant Chen's damaged console lit up. "Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts. Human signatures. They found us." A search fleet of 20 human vessels appeared around the wreckage. They had followed Cassandra's breadcrumbs across half the galaxy. Recovery teams moved quickly, bringing the survivors aboard, providing medical care, offering food and water and warmth. As Sarah was carried to the medical bay, she turned to look back at her ship one last time. The Indomitable was dead. It would never fly again, but it had done its job. It had saved the galaxy. More importantly, it had proven something. It had shown the galaxy what humans were really made of. Back on Earth, Sarah was asked to record a final log entry for the history books. She sat in a quiet room thinking about what to say. Finally, she began to speak. They expected an army. The galaxy sent fleets of millions of ships. Humanity sent one ship, the Indomitable. But that ship carried something no armada could match. It carried 200 souls who refused to quit, who adapted to impossible situations, who sacrificed everything, and who survived against all odds. That's not a human trait. That's the human condition. We can be defeated in battle, but we cannot be made to stop. We endure, we adapt, we overcome, and we never ever give up. The recording ended. Sarah's words spread across human space, then across the galaxy. They became a motto, a battle cry, a promise. The wreckage of the Indomitable was recovered and brought back to Earth. It was placed in orbit, transformed into a museum. Millions visited it every year, walking through the broken corridors, seeing the scorched bridge, touching the walls that had endured hell itself. And every human ship that left Earth after that day carried a piece of the Indomitable's hull. A reminder, a promise, a warning to the galaxy. Years later, a young recruit stood in the museum looking up at the damaged ship with wide eyes. She turned to a veteran beside her. "Is it true?" she asked. "One ship against 50,000? The veteran smiled. He had been there. He had served on one of the Allied ships that retreated. He remembered watching that lone human vessel dive into the swarm. "True," he said. "Kid, that story is actually smaller than what really happened. We made them tell it smaller so the galaxy wouldn't think we were bragging." The recruit looked back at the ship, understanding dawning in her eyes. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, new ships were being built. Human ships, each one carrying the legacy of the Indomitable. Each one crewed by people who understood what it meant to be human. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When humans send one ship, it's not because they lack resources. It's because one ship is all they need. Because one human ship, crewed by people who refuse to quit, is more dangerous than any armada the universe has ever seen.